Semi-tough stuff today. That doesn't surprise you, does it? This past couple, well, over a month, we've been talking about some neat stuff. But today we're going to talk about pride. Y'all are going, couldn't it be something easier? I'll try to make it fun, but all of us have a little bit of pride. We're going to talk about another word too. It's called humility. Anybody in here humble? Somebody told me a long time ago, if you say you're humble, you ain't humble. Them are two big words. You might be a redneck if directions to your house include turn off the paved road. You take your fishing pole to SeaWorld. You have flowers planted in a commode in your front yard. Come on now, we live in Connersville. You get out in the county and there is commodes in the front yard. I know there are. I've seen them. Cambridge City. Uh-oh. There ain't nobody from Cambridge City here. We're going to get him in trouble. There we go. Hey now. Your dad walks you to school because you're both in the same grade. That just was wrong, wasn't it? That wasn't even a Laurel joke, Red. I hope he still loves me. Red's got a praise this week. He throwed his ashes outside of his log house. He lives in a log cabin, and it caught fire and burnt the back of his pasture up to the next county road. That was a praise that nothing happened. It could have been bad. He got to see 5 different township fire trucks. I mean, they would have probably come and ate with him if he had just called them instead of, catching this place on fire. But God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? I had a call last year. My dad called and he said, "Need to pray for your brother." And I said, "How come?" He said, "Because he just burned up every round bale we have for the cows." I went, "How in the world do you do that?" He said, "Well, you throw your ashes out of your fireplace and it burns every round bale around." I went, "That'll cost us." You've got to be from the country to even laugh at those statements, don't you? You know you're going to a country church if the church votes not to buy a chandelier because nobody knows how to play one. The opening day of deer season is a church holiday. A member requests to be buried in his 4-wheel drive truck because it ain't never been in a hole it can't get out of. Folks think the rapture is what you get from lifting something too heavy. That one there made me laugh. The pastor asks for Bubba to take up the offering, and 5 guys and 2 women stand up. Sorry, Bubba. It wasn't towards you, but it was just so funny. I'll pay for that one when he gets done today. But pride gets in each one of our homes, don't it? Each one of us have some area in our life where we need to fix humility. Because, let's face it, the way we're raised in society, who wants to turn away when a situation gets really tough? How many of you have give a suggestion here in the church and you didn't get recognized? It's just not in our DNA to take last place. But the Bible talks about it in 2 different places, where it talks about the last shall be first and the first shall be last. And we talked about a little bit last week, when we become a Christian, we give up our right to be right. We give up our opinions when we walk in the door of what we think ought to go on in this building. Because the only one that we should be worried about is what God is doing in this building. There was a young woman that went to her pastor and said, I'm having a hard time with this sin, and I want your help. I come to church on Sundays and I can't help thinking I'm the prettiest girl in the building. I know I ought to think that. I shouldn't think that, but I can't help it. I want you to help me with it. The pastor replied, Mary, don't worry about it. In your case, it's not a sin, it's a horrible mistake. I want you guys to watch this video. Somebody get the lights.
I am perfect. I know I am. I am perfect. Because I give and give of myself. Because I love without ceasing. Because I am talented at everything. Because I am good beyond all reason. Because I am humble. Yes, very humble. Because when you look up perfect in the dictionary, you find a picture of me. And only a picture, because words can't even describe. And even a picture tries hard but can never come close to the sheer majesty that I am. Ask me the problem and I will figure it out. But don't beg to differ, because you probably should figure that because I'm the best, my way is the best possible way. I am structured to perform, my body carved, my abs of steel, and quite a good-looking face if I do say so myself. I don't drink or smoke. I don't choose to blemish this perfectly formed body with an imperfect substance. I don't submit to peer pressure either. I mean, what would be the point of listening to imperfect people? I don't hit back, I turn the other cheek. I don't steal, lie, or get jealous. I mean, what would I be jealous of? I am perfect. I don't judge. I know everyone's already below me. And I don't rely on friends or family, for they aren't perfect, and they always let me down. But I am perfect. Or am I? You see, I give because it makes you look good. And of course I love. But I love myself most of all. And I've been given talent, but I only use that talent to raise myself higher. And I'm a good person because I was told being a good person makes you more likable. And yes, I act humble, but it's just a show for others to see. I lie, I steal, I hit back, and I get jealous, especially of people that know where they're going in life. For it's clear that I'm not perfect. Rather, when you look up imperfect in the dictionary, you see a scratch where I tried to cover up the letters to my name. Here lies my problem. For so long, I've tried to be perfect, thinking that the big man upstairs ought to owe me something for my great life. But this is not the case. For it is when I think I am perfect, it is when I think I deserve something, that my pride destroys my ability to be without sin. So if the only way to being perfect makes me worship myself, then where does that leave me? It leaves me with the ability to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. And like grace, do everything. All the things that I ever do mean nothing and do nothing. For the more I try, the more I raise myself and lower God. But the Father has given me a grace that abounds my selfish pride. So it's when He takes over. It's when I lower myself and raise Him. It's when I do absolutely nothing. It's when I'm wrapped in His grace, allowing Him to do everything, that the I am makes me perfect.
There was only one perfect person in this world, and that was Jesus. And as I was listening to that, I've listened to that thing 3 or 4 times. It walks all over you. Even though not very many of us think we're perfect, sometimes we act like it. How many of you, when somebody does something wrong, you're quick and fast to see it? But when we do something wrong, we kind of, it's not so bad. But if somebody else does it, I mean, the flashers, buzzers, sounds like one of them big expensive cars that you walk out in the parking lot and they're flat annoying when they start buzzing and honking. We think it's a big deal. I'm going to talk in two different places. Same place in the Bible, but two different parables this morning. And the first one, you may look at me and go, what did that have to do with what you're talking about? We're going to talk about the Pharisees. We're going to talk about the Sabbath. So we're going to start in Luke chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. It says, one Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in the home of a leader of the Pharisees. Now, if you stop right there for just a second, I don't know why in the world that the Pharisees, first off, would even ask Jesus to come in and eat with them, because he has busted them every time he gets around them, doesn't he? He says, you guys are a bunch of hypocrites. You think you know the whole law, and you're missing the picture. And the people were watching him closely. Now, why do you think the Pharisees would ask Jesus to come in and dine with them? They got an ulterior motive, don't they? It says there was a man whose arms and legs were swollen. Jesus asked the Pharisees and the experts in religious law, is it permitted? Now, he knew he was in there and fixing to get in trouble. He knew that they were watching him. So, Jesus asked the Pharisees and the experts in religious law, is it permitted in the law to heal people on Sabbath day or not? Now, why do you think Jesus asked them the question? Because he knew what the answer was. But what happened is when they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. Now, sometimes I wonder why he didn't just touch the Pharisees and heal their ignorance. You know what I mean? I mean, because if he had of, it wouldn't have ended up the way it ended up with it. They wouldn't have crucified him. He had all that power, but he didn't do anything because his only thought was on you. Everything Jesus did in his 30 plus years of ministry, he was thinking about you. That's hard to think about, ain't it? He was thinking about me when I wasn't even born. But he was thinking about you. Now, when they refused to answer, Jesus healed that sick man. Why did he do that? The same reason he heals people today. Because it gets our attention. He turned to them and said, which one of you work on the Sabbath? Now, would you have been scared to say something back then? I'd been like, I wonder what his motive is here. If I say no, he's going to get me, and if I say yes, he's going to get me. He kind of backed him in a corner. Jesus had that brilliance. If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out? And again, they could not answer. Now, if you remember what the Pharisees were, they were the ones that, when you remember the widow who gave her 2 mites, everything she had? She already knew about giving 100% to the Lord. Now, does that mean you got to run out and give everything you got away? No. What that means is when God speaks to you and says, do this, he wants to see you go, hey, I enjoy giving. Hey, I enjoy helping people. Hey, I enjoy serving. They're hang-ups with rules being more important than hurting people. It's funny that Jesus stayed calm even when there were people trying to trip him up. Because if you look and you know exactly what's going on here, they were trying to trip him up so they could arrest him. He was focused on people that need a touch from the Master. And then he goes right into humility and pride. Let's look at verses 7 through 11. When Jesus noticed that all who had come to dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them advice. Now, if we look back in that time period, it was a big deal where you sit at the table. Now, even if we don't think about it, y'all think about exactly where you sit at your house at the table. Y'all got a special seat? Usually the guy sits at the head and the kids, and Bubba said the other day that he could tell you exactly who sat where and how they sat and what was going on. He knows exactly where Bug's sitting. He knows exactly where Junior's sitting, where his wife is sitting, where he's sitting. And it made me think. I thought, good night, I can't even tell you where we sit. Sometimes it's in the front room, sometimes it's at the table. Just depends on who's there. But usually Tracy puts my food at the head of the table. But back then, where you sat in relationship to the table, it meant something. So, when Jesus started trying to tell them what he's fixing to try to tell them, it kind of wasn't, it was going against the grain. So he gave them some advice. When you are invited to a wedding feast, don't you sit in the seat of honor? What if somebody who is more distinguished than you also has been invited? The host will come and say, give this person your seat. Then you will be embarrassed, and you will have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then, when your host sees you, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you. Then you will be honored in front of all our guests. For those who exalt themselves, listen to this right here. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Now, there's some of you out there looking at me like, Chris, I understand that, but so are we just supposed to let people walk all over us? What does it mean to be a servant? It means sometimes you're going to take garbage. Plain and simple. Doesn't mean that you can't take up for your family. What this is talking about, me and Tracy went out and ate Saturday. Hunter wasn't there. We don't usually go out and eat because on Saturday she likes to sleep till noon. I'm just kidding. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. You let the sleeping bear stay in bed. You wake her up, it's not pretty. Some people like sleep. I think when you get to heaven, you'll get all you need. I'm trying to get used to that, but we went to eat. And I seen another guy there that I'd talked to. He goes to another church. And every time he sees me, he talks to me. And as we walked in, we were meeting another couple there. And he said hi to me. I said hi, and I went to sit down. Well, we ordered, and he come up to me before he started to leave, and he was just chit-chatting. He pulled out his wallet, and he started thumbing through his money, and he threw 2 20s on the table, and he said, I want to pay for your dinner. Now, if you guys have ate at Maggie's, it don't take $40 to feed 2 people. You know. I went, cool. I made money this morning. And then God said, you know what you got to do with that, don't you? It's like, yeah, it's going in my wallet. Mm-mm. You need to keep on giving it. I'm like, but Lord, I struggled coming to eat anyways because I didn't really have the money, and now you're telling me I just made a little money, and now you're telling me I got to do something with it? Yep. Now, God, come on. We can, that go a long ways tomorrow when we go out and eat. Basically said, you heard me. I said, okay. So I looked over at the couple we was with, and they had their 2 kids, and I just reached over and grabbed all their tickets, and I took it up and paid for it. The waitress started going through it, and I said, now look, wait a minute here. I don't have a lot of money here. I got $40. Because God decided he's going to give me $40. I'm thinking, 6 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm fixing how to get out a check and write a check on top of that. I'm being real with you. You guys have been there in the same britches I was in at Maggie's. Lady said, it'll be $40.60. I went, Lord, you have a sense of humor. So I paid it. I gave her an extra $1. Went and sat down and finished our meal, and we left. Bob got him a motorcycle, and we went and hauled it, and I go out to Bob's house, and that very same guy is at Bob's house. I said, man, I sure do appreciate the dinner today. You didn't have to do that. But he said, I wanted to. I'm thinking, now, come on. Well, there's got to be something going on here. He said, yeah. He said, when we walked in, we sat down. Somebody come and took our ticket. So he said, I went over and took your ticket. I said, well, I took somebody else's. Paying it forward. Now, I could have been selfish, as we all are. I mean, there's many times that, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but how many times have you just nonchalantly thrown a $5 bill at the bucket back there and then went and spent $40 on dinner? I was there in my life. You'd walk, the plate come by, throw $5. Feel good? That'll keep the lights on another day. Are you serious? And then I go out and feed my belly. Spend $40. That's how I used to do it. But God told me yesterday, don't keep that money. I took care of you. I seen that you didn't really have the money to be out eating yesterday because we were 40. Tracy's over sitting just thinking. She's probably praying. Get off the rabbit trail and We were 45 minutes late because she says I didn't tell her we had to be there at a certain time. See, we're going to pray for her before this service is over, because I know that she was listening to me when I talked to him the day before, but she says I didn't tell her. But we talked about other things that I said on the phone, and she said, well, I heard you say that. And you didn't hear 9 o'clock? We were 40-some minutes late. And I had an attitude when we pulled in the parking lot. I'm like, they're sitting waiting on us, probably done ate and ready to say hellos and leave. But God had it under control. He already had all that worked out. Yeah, they did. I'm just being real. You guys are looking at me like, yeah, how long did it take you to come up with this? I didn't do it. I was struggling because I was tired and whatever. I mean, I can make excuses. We all got them. You probably have an excuse why you didn't want to be here this morning. It's too slick on the front porch. Preacher said throw ice and come on. Salt. You know what I mean. You don't throw ice to ice, you throw salt. Come on. Shiny things. But isn't it funny how God works? As we sit here today, God's telling you what you need to do in your life. He's telling you what you need to let go of. I'm just the teacher. I believe that God's really working on everybody in this room because he knows where we want to be, but he's got to get us to let go of what we think and let him take control. Because he wants to bless us. He wants us to enjoy life. The more that I let go, gives him more control. And then it just knocks me over. Let's get back to the message. Jesus taught in a brilliant way. And in Luke 14:11, he said, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The world says if we want to climb higher and be somebody, we have to push, fight, claw to work your way to the top, right? Because nobody wants to stay down here when they work at a job. They want to be up around where they got all the nervousness and such. The world says the way up is up. But Jesus is saying the opposite. He's saying the way up is to go down. In other words, if you try to promote your prideful self, you'll end up humbled. Has God ever humbled you? Did you like it? Embarrassing. And he also says the way down is up. And the Bible says specifically in James chapter 4, verse 10, it says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. If you let God take care of all your problems, don't worry about taking up for yourself. Don't worry about when somebody says something bad to you. Because you know what? The Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. He does a better job at it than we do. So contrary to what the world's telling us, the way up is down and the way down is up. But there's a problem with pride. Pride is basically the attitude that says, I'm the center of my universe. Jesus watched these Pharisees. They were jockeying for position, trying to get up on top. But it's hard to recognize in ourselves, isn't it? It's hard for us to recognize. Pride is something that lurks right below the surface in your life. And it just takes that one spark, and y'all just bow up like a banty rooster, and you're ready to peck 3 people. I want you to take this test. I got a little bitty quick test, and I want you to answer the questions in your mind. So if you got a piece of paper, write this down. Just check yes or no and see if this stuff applies to you. Number 1 is, I enjoy being the center of attention. Yes or no? I think I deserve the best. Much of my conversation is filled with I. Y'all are looking out there like, I'm not going to crack a smile or even act like I'm even listening to him because I'm not going to let him know what I just answered. Come on, I had to read this and do it. It ain't pretty. I find it difficult to admit. Now, there's some of you that I'm real close to, so y'all need to listen to this. I find it difficult to admit when I'm wrong. Don't sit back there stoic. I know who you are. I was saying, well, I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. Come on. Nobody wants to admit when they're wrong. I seldom pass a mirror without looking at myself. We was at the store yesterday, JCPenney's. Tracy, I don't know if she's trying to change me or what, but she found a pair of boots she liked. She goes, where's the mirror at? And I'm thinking, yep. You have to see. I'm going to pay for that, fellas, if y'all didn't know. You don't have to agree with her. Come on, brother. Whose side do you on? I'm just teaching. Don't crucify me. I, stubborn, I don't like to be corrected or change. Come on. My feelings are easily hurt. I am impatient with others' mistakes. I don't get enough appreciation for what I do. I'm offended if I render a service and I don't receive a thank you. I seldom ask for help because I can do the job better myself. I'm with you, sister. There's sometimes that I get in trouble. They're like, could you not have called? And I'm like, I didn't want to bother you. That's my classic statement there. I just didn't think you had time. I feel pretty good that I don't check yes to every question. Yes or no? Now, if you have one or more yes answers, it reveals a presence of pride in your life. Isn't that crazy? We may not think that we have proud issues inside, but how many of you have needed your church family at some point in your life in the last month and you've just been like, I'm not calling them because I can do it myself? You just stole a blessing from the rest of us. I'm not going to call Chris because he's too busy. I got other people. I can call other people. to help me? If you don't have any yes answers, it just simply says you're a liar. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, you're lying to yourself. You might as well, when we have altar call, right here's the place. We got to be truthful with ourselves. It's in our genes to be prideful. How many times have you heard what I want this church to be known for? Service church. Not the biggest church in Connersville, not the most expensive, elegant, more money than we know what to do with type of church. Even though if all of us give like what God talked in our brain, I would never have to even preach on money. God wants us to be service oriented. Because how'd he come? He was a suffering servant, wasn't he? And he didn't have to be. So what makes us think that we don't have to be humble? That's kind of bad, ain't it? If you think about it. Pride is hard to see in ourselves, but we can easily see it in others. There's two things that there's another thing that pride does that leads to ruin. How many ever in your life's been too proud to ask for help? Hey, I'm still old school. I was taught you take care of yourself till they're about to yank your last tooth out, and then you might tap out and say, hey, I could have used help back when I had a full mouth of teeth. And we're too proud to sit and go to somebody and say, you know what? I made a stupid mistake and I need some help. Jesus is right there. Proverbs 16, verse 18 says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. A proud person is going to stumble one of these days and hit the ground hard. A proud person, God's going to one of these days set you down at the bottom and mop up the mess with yourself, and then he's going to say, now what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What Jesus was saying is the best way to guarantee you'll fall is to let pride take over your life. I heard a funny story about a frog. He wanted to go south with the birds that he was seeing fly over for the winter. Frogs don't do frozen ground and such. It was too far to hop, and he didn't know how to fly. So he thought about it, and he come up with a solution. He got a couple of bird friends that he had to hold the end of a stick in their beak as they fly. Now you can see how this is going. They clamped down on the ends, and he clamped down on the center of the stick. And the birds took off, and the frog was hanging from the stick that they were carrying in his mouth. They flew over a couple of farmers who observed the scene. One farmer said to the other, what a brilliant idea. Whoever come up with that idea is a genius. I guess it was one of those birds who had the idea. When the frog heard that, he just couldn't let the birds get the credit for a good idea. So he said, I, as he fell to the ground. He had it made. The moral of that story is if somebody gets the credit for a good idea, keep your mouth shut. It's so easy to want to be in the front. It's so easy to want to have everybody look at you because of the good idea. I've learned one good thing since we started that church. This one right here. If you will put everybody else before you and push them up to the front and let people hug them on the back, and there's more to that than there is to be in front.